I'm going to try to orchestrate, manipulate the environment to put me there, give me plausible cover for action or, cover for status to be there to talk to this person, right? And then I befriend them and I build rapport. And then I get that second meeting. I'm not getting the intel on the first date. Sometimes you do. If you do get intel on that first date, that might be a suitability problem. And there's a story I love to tell when I was at Spies school.
So can I ask a few questions before we jump into there as well? In terms of that initial recruitment process, how much did you know about this unit area that you were applying to, and what does that process actually look like? Is there certain qualifications in terms of, can anybody that's had a certain amount of SF time be able to apply, or are they looking for specific individuals per se?
Specific individuals, with specific experience. There's several places you can go as an SF guy. This place is not a typical path. Mm-hmm. It's a completely different career path. You exist in a different ecosystem than people in the tiered units, but you work with them, right? You work together on a lot of projects and stuff like that. There's a lot of crossover in terms. It had a greater deal of autonomy, mm-hmm. and that's what I was looking for. So you get the certification, right? And there's the Cat 1 certification, Cat 1 human intelligence. I don't know. I've heard through the grapevine they've done away with that now, which makes sense. You're either clan or you're not, So you're either trained to do clandestine operations or you're not trained to clan. Very simple, right? And I think that's probably a better approach, and makes the skills that you need to do the job, way more focused. You know what I'm saying? Going that route. But once you get your Cat 1, your Cat 1 hunting license, you're kind of a free agent. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the particular unit that I belong to, we worked in support of a 3-letter agency and their requirements, but I wasn't necessarily married to that. So I could go work for another 3-letter agency, represent that one, bring their requirements to me, and use that. So similar to like me picking up the phone and making that sarin gas thing go away, mm-hmm. is, we come back to what's in it for me. And the most extreme thing is that I have an operating directive that's pretty broad, mm-hmm. also very strategic. I can go service that, with another 3-letter agency or a covered unit or whomever. Mm-hmm. And it was more, the way I saw it was carte blanche. You have a lot more autonomy to do the job, but it is also a lot fucking harder getting out the door, because now I'm in a position where I have dual authorities. Mm-hmm. I'm not just operating on Title 10 military authority. I have Title 50. You were
discussing this. We talked about that a little offline. Can you break that down?
So, right, Title 50 is, you have these laws and regulations that guide 3-letter agencies and covert operations and clandestine operations. You have Title 10, right, which is all the code, for military operations. But within that, there is rules for clandestine operations as well, and within a declared theater of armed conflict. Mm-hmm. Key note, and as well as regulations outside. We say ODTAC, outside a declared theater of armed conflict. So let's just say every idea that I had, and exposure, you have a lot of autonomy, but everything had such extreme legal review. Mm-hmm. Very, very rigid. When you work in clandestine operations in the human intelligence world, doing this sort of stuff, is that it's very similar to special forces, where it's a huge gray area. Huge gray area. You're working with somebody that, has access to, this one. Let's say they have technical access to something, right? I'm talking to this person to exploit their technical access to a system or a database or, something along those lines that, one of these 3-letter agencies would really love, right? Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. Due to the blending of disciplines, and the potential, let's say in that example, the potential exposure, right, of what could go wrong. It needs very rigid legal review, by Office of General Counsels. And so to make sure that everything is within, Executive Order 12333, Title 50, Title 10, and Proc 10, all these things that guide the military and the intelligence community. So it's complicated to say the least. So getting buy-in, you can have an idea, right? You could have a source, you could have the best idea in the world, but if you ain't going to get buy-in from OGC, you don't got an op, dude. And it's not about building rapport or anything. It's about articulating the means and methods of way you're going about it, so that they understand that it is within the rule of law, or the guiding principle, all these guidelines that we have to adhere to. So more autonomy, but doesn't mean you have carte blanche to just do whatever you want. I would probably say, if I could I could probably have like a borderline JD in this at this point, you know what I mean? Because if you're trying to push the envelope, you're always going to be talking illegal. If you're trying to do right, you're always going to be talking illegal. And that's the thing. It's, I get really kind of offended when I see, people thinking that, we're out there just willy nilly doing whatever, and it's way more complicated than that, but it's also streamlined, because say I want to go talk to this person and I'm going to go conduct a bump. A bump is, I'm going to orchestrate a bump. So I'm going to go talk to this person. They're going to be at a convention, let's say, for instance, or they're taking this flight, and I'm going to try to get in that seat right next to them, right? I'm going to try to orchestrate, manipulate the environment to put me there, give me plausible cover for action, or, cover for status to be there to talk to this person, right? And then I befriend them and I build rapport, and then I get that second meeting. I'm not getting the intel on the first date. Sometimes you do. If you do get intel on that first date, that might be a suitability problem. And there's a story I love to tell when I was at Spies school is, you do an away city. So they send you to a random city that you may or may not know anything about. I can't say where I was, but I don't know shit. Never been there before. In the U.S. Yeah. And you're operating in a live environment, so to speak. And you're doing your trade craft. You're getting your rounds. You're honing your trade craft, learning stuff. You're running your asset. And so I was done for the day. And it was probably about like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. I'm beat. I've been beating pavement all day, walking the city, trying to look for operational sites to do like a brush pass and a dead drop and, the trade craft that you need, for the operation that I was there for in the fictitious environment. So I just like go into this random bar, and, you're always like checking for your status because you don't know if you're being followed or not. And I go in this random bar, not planned, didn't even Google search it or anything. You tend to stray away from using tech when you do this job because of the digital footprint that it creates, or the digital fingerprints it creates. So I go in, and, it's an L-shaped bar. So I come in, I'm at the bottom of the L, and all these seats are taken along the far side of the bar. There's one empty seat here at the corner, which has my back towards the door, which any dude, I'm sure you're the same way, fair level of uncomfortableness with it.
You're not putting your back to the door.
But, after, the thing is, you want to break out of these habits when you do it, right? Because, you want to position yourself where you can spot surveillance, but you also want to make surveillance feel comfortable too, right? So not that I was operating at that time, but these are all
you're thinking
split. Yeah, you're always thinking that way. It's a chess game, right? You always got to think, and your perception matters a lot too. Because if they're perceiving you that you look like a spy and not a tourist, then guess what? You're kind of fucked, right? So you're going to get a visit.
Yep.
They're going to put more people on you, right? So it's important to appear benign and normal. And let me finish the story before you definitely asked me a little bit more about that. But so I go in there and there's one gentleman sitting here and I'm like, all right, well, I'll sit one seat away from him. Mm-hmm. So I sit one seat away from him and he's there. And you know, when you just sit down next to somebody in a bar, they just want to talk. And that was the vibe. He had a laptop up and he was working on some things. And I order my food, I grab a beer, I'm sitting there, and then he does this classic thing. This is something I've done, is like use the bartender to engage with somebody that you want to talk to. Like you physically motion your body.
Yep.
And you're talking to the bartender, but then you go over to them and you include them in the conversation, and they're like, oh shit, I guess I'm in this conversation now. Well, like he did that to me. And I'm like, what's going on here? Right. But just a friendly guy. And this dude was slamming the famous grouse, which is like, I think I pronounced it right. The famous grouse or famous grouse. Pretty strong taste in scotch, right? I'll say that. Mm-hmm. I could smell it. I'm a seat over from him. I could smell it from there. And so I'm like, all right, I guess I'm in this conversation now. And so, there's a technique called parrot on the shoulder, mm-hmm. right? Someone's wearing, if you're looking to initiate conversation with somebody, for you, for instance, I'd be like, oh, hey, you got a Whoop band. That's really cool. Mm-hmm. I've had a Whoop band, and then we start talking about Whoop bands and then, the conversation goes from there. So he has his laptop open. He engaged conversation with me. I'm free to engage, right? And I'm like, hey, so what are you working on? Oh, well, blah, just starts vomiting his life story to me. And I'm asking more questions of what he does for work. And then he just starts vomiting intel. But I don't think he knew it was intel, but it was to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, there's got to be a requirement for this shit. And I'm like, oh my God, right? And this is just a casual conversation I'm having with this guy. Yeah. I'm trying to blow off steam. And I'm like, man, I can't catch a fucking break. You know what I mean? But I'm like super excited because now I actually have something. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, is the course fucking with me? I'm like, there's no way they would have known that I just would walk into this bar and have this guy waiting here for me. There's no way they could orchestrate that. But you don't know. You read stories about the almighty powerful intelligence community, right? Yeah. So you just assume, right? So I go back to my room. I write this up. I write an ops cable. I write it. IAR, so intelligence report. Encapsulate everything. Get all the basic information that I needed, and I didn't. Because I wasn't there to do that specific thing. I have the ability to get a second meet, but I didn't. Sign up to be like shake hands, second meeting type thing, right? Yeah. Because that's the most important thing that you have to do is get that second meet. But I got recontact information, et cetera, right? And so I get back from the trip and I was like, oh. So in the book, I talk about the gatekeepers. This story isn't in the book, but I love telling it. So I go, oh, I was like, y'all motherfuckers are going to catch me stepping, huh? Yeah, catch me tripping. I was like, you ain't going to catch me tripping, dude. And I was like, look what I got. Right. And I'm like, nice try. They're like, wait, you did fucking what? Right. And I'm like, somebody's got to care about this. So like, dude, no, that wasn't part of the course. So like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I just was having dinner. This guy started fucking talking to me. I can't help it. Right. And, it was wicked funny, but it was like one of those like things. I was like, oh, you know what? I actually might be decent at this job.